Hey Emma,
Yes, Melon.
what would you call it if you lived in a medieval town? What would you call a guy who you worked with to make some containers for like your wine or your ale or maybe some wheat? But he tricked ya and charged you more than he told you he would.
I don't know. What do you call him?
Sly Cooper. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your million damage host, Madelyn.
I'm your sneaky host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. This week we are talking about Sly Cooper, which you probably got from the quote-unquote joke, and Granblue Fantasy ReLink.
Heck yeah, we are. I love jokes that are just definitions.
Like, what else would I have done? Like, what?
I know.
What would the joke have been?
The grand blue sky. The grand blue Sly.
Oh man, that's pretty good.
That's
I
probably
won't
what I'll
lie.
call this episode.
I probably could have done something with like pooper a scooper.
I'm glad you didn't.
I'm just saying, like keep that in mind, listeners. It could have been much worse.
Yeah.
So old game. Sly Cooper.
Yes.
Sly Cooper is an action-adventure platformer stealth video game. The original one, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, which, like, let me tell ya, AAA type studios don't make games with titles like that anymore.
I love Latin.
Like, you think Thievius is Latin?
I don't think it's actually Latin.
It probably is actually Latin in the world of Sly Cooper, actually.
Yeah, I think that's what it's trying to parody. It's not actually Latin.
Studios just don't make games with titles like that anymore, and
They don't make games with
why.
subtitles. You know?
Yeah, where are the subtitles?
There's not enough subtitles.
Like, just unhinged stuff happening in the subtitles of games released in the early 2000s or so, and no longer.
This is also, I think, like, the last of the, like, notable trend of notable Sony developers that began with little furry guys and then transitioned into normal human men.
Have we talked about Ratchet and Clank?
I think so. I think it was maybe one of our really early ones, in fact.
So I just no longer... It's so long ago that I don't even hold a memory of it. I know we talked about Jak and Daxter, because I played that one.
Yeah, Insomniac holding on tight to their little furry guy, even as they also make games about normal men. Normal men with spider powers, but normal men.
Yeah. Even as they just light money on fire.
Everybody's doing that.
I know.
I'm sure Sucker Punch, the developers of Sly Cooper, also did that with Ghost of Tsushima and the upcoming Ghost of Tsushima 2, and we just don't know it.
Yeah, spoiler alert for the the usual upcoming Madelyn being like, will they bring this one back? You think this one's coming back? Sucker Punch is like, no.
Nope.
I mean, to be fair, Sucker Punch is like, maybe someday, but absolutely not right now.
Yeah. To be fair, they said that about, I think, both this and Infamous. They're very much just making the Ghost of Tsushima sequel right now, I think.
And of course they are. Goose of Tsushima.
That's a different game. That's a mashup with Untitled Goose Game.
Wow, that would be powerful. If you give a goose a sword. But Ghost of Tsushima sold like a bajillion copies. So, like, more power to them. But we're not talking about Ghost of Tsushima. We've already talked about that on the show. We're talking about Sly Cooper. So Sly Cooper, it's a series. There's 4 of them. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus came out for the PlayStation 2 in 2002. And then saw sequels in 2004, Band of Thieves, 2005, Honor Among Thieves, and then Thieves in Time, which came out in 2013 for the PS3. That was developed by a different team.
Yes.
And then nothing.
And then they made Infamous.
You can play, I was saying to Emma, it's trapped on the PlayStation 3. It's not. If you have PlayStation Plus Premium, you can play all of the Sly Coopers.
Oh, you can? Wow.
Yeah. Or at least as of a couple years ago, you could. I can't say that I verified this because I am not a premium member.
No. Premium really does not seem worth it for more than like a month at a time if you perchance wanted to play all the Sly Cooper games, I guess. But,
Perchance
yeah.
you might. Perchance you might.
You might.
So Sly Cooper is a raccoon and thief. Master thief. And he lives in sort of an alternate... Like, it's so funny to me that, like, Sly Cooper is a raccoon. Right?
Yeah.
Like, a raccoon man. But the police that are after him are Interpol.
Yeah. But they are also animals.
Correct. But Sly Cooper exists in sort of an alternate real world. Not just like a real world-like world. Like an alternate real world, which is
an
really
alternate
funny.
world where you're anthropomorphic.
Exactly. Well, I think that we are anthropomorphic, but just heavier on the anthro than
Anthropomorphic animals.
Thank you. So Sly and his buddies, Bentley the turtle and Murray the hippopotamus, you know, Bentley is the brains, Murray is the muscle.
Yep.
Well,
the driver.
And the driver, yes. The getaway man, or the getaway hippo, I guess, rather, more accurately.
Someone on the Wikipedia page, this is probably a quote from the game, or they just are not fond of Murray, but they call him their full-time wheelman and part-time burden.
Dang. While we're doing quotes of Wikipedia, from Wikipedia, I also had a quote from Wikipedia that I was like, that's funny. Like, why did you say it this way? Here it is. Due to his heritage, Sly has a number of special moves that he learns throughout the games.
Well, part of the thief... Okay, so the setup for the Thievius Raccoonus is the titular...
Everybody, take a shot every time we say Thievius Raccoonus.
The titular Thievius Raccoonus is like a family book in the Sly Cooper family.
The Cooper family. His
the
first
Cooper
name is
family.
Sly.
Yes. That's like all about like their history of secret sneaky techniques, right? It makes them really sneaky. And when Sly is a child, his parents are, I guess, murdered, I guess.
Yes,
it's not
murdered. He sees his father murdered in front of him.
It's not really a dark game in tone, but occasionally it's like, yeah, his parents were murdered.
There are
by
like
the
noir
Fiendish
inspirations
Five.
here, right? That occasionally feel maybe, yeah, it's like, oh, that's dark.
Yeah. By the Fiendish Five, who then also steal pages of his family's book and split it amongst themselves and go off to commit crimes, right? Like real crimes. The Cooper family creed is just like Robin Hooding, essentially.
No. Even better. They only steal from thieves.
Yeah. You're right, yes. Robin Hood, rich. They're like criminals.
Yeah.
I guess. But the pages of the Thievius Raccoonus like go over like various ancestors of Sly Cooper who are apparently from like all over the world, right? So I think that might be what it's referencing. Like the Japanese Cooper. You know.
I just liked, it was not clear to me in reading it at first. It's like, are you saying because he's a raccoon? Like, are you saying because he
maybe
comes
that
from a
too.
family of thieves? It was just a funny way to talk about the heritage of a anthropomorphic raccoon.
Yeah.
Was just funny. It was a funny, very serious Wikipedia take. But yes, in the first game, your goal is to recover those pages from the five. The five.
Fiendish
adjective
Five.
I can't remember right now. Fiendish Five. Who are themselves quite amusing as a lineup of characters, right? We've got a Welsh pirate frog.
Yeah.
We've got an American like bulldog, like mafia gangster guy. We've got like an alligator shaman who is like trying to create a zombie army. And we've got like a pyromaniac fireworks panda.
Yeah.
And an owl.
Yeah. Who turns into a cyborg.
Which, like, again, they don't make them like this,
I know. Really, we lost something when we stopped making games about fuzzy little guys.
It's true.
I was thinking about this a little bit. I was wondering why, like, there's such a consistent, like, shift, right? And I wonder if it's, like, well, maybe part of it is, like, the growing up, quote-unquote, of video games. But also
Sure.
I wonder if, like, technology got to a point where they could, like, make people that looked sort of normal. And so these Western developers were like, heck yeah, it's time to make people who look sort of normal now, as opposed to our little toony guys.
Do you think, though, that if they had had that earlier, like, Sly Cooper just would have been a man?
Apparently they, so in their first game, Sucker Punch, who were made by a bunch of people who were not from games, apparently. So, they were like, in their first game, they were like figuring it out as they went. And that was with Ubisoft. In the first game, the villain was a raccoon. It's called like the Clockwork something. I don't remember.
Robots,
and so they thought it would be funny if, like, in their next game, they made the raccoon the hero because he'd been the villain in the previous one. And also they thought it was funny to put a raccoon in a mask as like a visual. They thought that was amusing.
More of that in game interviews in 2024.
This was a
embrace tradition, to reference last week's podcast.
Yeah. This was a Game Informer piece from a while ago, like 2010. Yeah. Just reflecting on Sly Cooper and their making the games. Fun story, very funny gamer story about how they named themselves Sucker Punch. Is they were mostly concerned about like picking something they could get the web rights for one thing. So they had like a whole list of names. And one of the guys who founded it went to his wife and was like, which one do you think? And she said, I don't really care. Just don't call it Sucker Punch. And so apparently they decided, quote, whatever a woman who was in her mid-30s hated would be the name that a 50-year-old boy would like the most. I think she's forgiven me now.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
I guess it's true. Right? Fair enough.
It's very like that ad. Oh, man, what is the, like, your mom would hate it kind of ad.
Yes, exactly. I don't remember what that's for. I have to look it up. Moms hate something.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Probably.
So, these games are like heist games. I was thinking about that too. Like, people like Sly Cooper, and like it's pretty successful, and it never quite unfortunately reached the highs of its fuzzy brethren, right? Both Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank definitely sold better, were more popular, better known, and some of that has to do with, as multiple articles assured me, them, like, especially as they headed into their sequels, being willing to, in the case of Jak and Daxter, go like dark, and in the case of Ratchet and Clank, continue to make like slightly off-color jokes.
Yeah.
And Sly Cooper is, despite the fact that, again, his father gets murdered in like a thief war in front of his young raccoon eyes.
I was just reading it. His friend gets like paralyzed in the second one.
So like, there's dark stuff going on, but it's like Saturday morning cartoon vibes.
Yeah. He has a whole, like, little will they, won't they cat and mouse thing with the main Interpol officer that, Carmelita. Which, you know, I saw that article referencing that, like, Ratchet and Clank has, like, some off-color jokes, but, like, they're not, like, respectful about Carmelita exactly. The newspaper articles of her, like, arresting the criminals in the first game after Sly defeats them is always, like, hot cat arrests weird frog or something like that. So there's that.
But what I think is interesting about the success of these games, I was thinking about this. I was like, man, like the heist story, one of my favorite like storytelling things. I love a good heist thing.
You like it when a plan comes together.
That's a deeply psychological way of analyzing that I don't appreciate, actually. So yikes. But like a heist game actually feels like a very hard thing to pull off to me, because there's like something about a heist narrative that, you know, either you want it to be the like, here's how it's all gonna go down kind of montage, right? Or you want their, like, sometimes maybe you want the characters on screen to be smarter than you and know things that you don't, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And like that feels like a hard narrative or a hard storytelling structure to bring to a video game.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't think really the heisting in Sly Cooper is particularly involved.
It's not, but I still thought it was striking that, like, oh, you know, on one hand, we steal things in games all the time. On the other hand, when, you know, Sly at least in some ways, like, mimics some of the, like, cool factor of some of those, even if it's not sort of, like, the exact same storytelling beats. But it does sort of feel like, oh, like, actually that's not, that's a narrative that we see in, you know, action-type movies all the time.
Yeah.
But it feels hard to bring to games. Yeah.
I think it's because in a heist, there's so many, like, in a good heist movie, there's a lot of moving parts, right? And to, like, gamify that, you would want there to be some chance of various things going wrong. And then it sort of kaleidoscopes from there into a whole bunch of situations that you have to take it into account for.
Yeah.
So I can see how, like, trying to really gamify, like, a heist thing would be something that would be quite difficult to even start on.
No, it just wouldn't work. I mean, it's just not I don't want to say it wouldn't work, but it would be really hard to make work. Because, yeah, like a good heist story is like, oh, it all fell perfectly into place.
Yeah. Or it's the fun of, like, the improvisation, right? When things go wrong.
Yeah.
So.
But even that to me is like, oh, like, ultimately it all fell perfectly into place.
Oh, right? Yeah, sure. I just mean when you gamify it, you would want either certain things to succeed or fail, and then the player to go on from there. So.
Exactly.
And you said Sly didn't, like, sell as well as the other ones. It fell into, like, this weird place when it came out where it was on a lot of, like, best PS2 game you've never heard of, right? Yeah. Or best underappreciated gem. But, like, apparently their sales target for the first Sly was 500,000 copies, and they sold about 1 million pretty quick. I think the full Sly series, as of, like, a while ago, like 2006 or something, I don't know, was that like 6 million copies? But yeah, so they very much hit the target they were looking for, and so they made 2 sequels to it because they made double what they wanted to make a sequel. So seems like it did pretty well for them.
Definitely. It just, in the sort of like longer cultural history, has perhaps gotten a bit overshadowed. Although Sly is still very much a PlayStation kind of one of the mascot characters.
Yeah. I mean, Sucker Punch has very much become one of their, like, one of Sony's flagship studios now. So, really clawed their way up in the world. This also reminded me because there was like some, like there was like an older article or something that was like speculating how much it sold. And like, remember the greatest hits line for PS2?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't remember. I sort of vaguely remembered.
But
anyway, it's interesting because you can
boxes that had that on it.
Yeah. You can estimate how much a series sold, because if they're in the greatest hits line, they sold at least 400,000.
Interesting.
Because that's how they determined what it went in there.
So at least that many.
They don't have those lines anymore.
So now we just have to trust what we're told.
Yeah.
I liked in Sly 2, here's an innovation that maybe, should they bring this back? Maybe. So you can use an optional USB microphone, and in that game, so you can yell to like distract enemies or like have them come to you, but also like you can't cough.
See, we could bring that back now because we have like better push to talk.
Yeah,
technology. So
I think it's a missed opportunity. I'm like, we're all like, oh, haptic this, haptic that. Why are we not?
There are games that there are games that exist that do have you use your voice.
Okay, but like, where is the like AAA application of that?
You're right. Shout out back to when I don't remember why this would have happened, but I remember distinctly playing The World Ends With You on my DS and running into the Reaper that's like, try out this pin, and it's the pin where you have to yell into the microphone, and I was on the Metro for some reason. So I just had to close it.
Diabolical, Nomura. Sowing just chaos in transit systems worldwide.
I love the DS. So many functions. I brought it back around.
No, somebody tell Naughty Dog about USB microphone. I'm just saying.
Why?
I feel like if they're gonna make The Last of Us until that studio closes, right? So I feel like you could have the. I'm just kidding, but like I feel like having a thing where it's like, oh, you can't make sound would be a fun gimmick.
Yeah. Interesting.
They can just walk across the hall to their buddies at Sucker Punch. That's how it works when you're a Sony studio, right?
Exactly.
You have one room at Sony that you all live in.
Yeah, I assume so. Speaking of, well, actually, do you have anything else for Sly?
I have a couple of additional tidbits.
Okay.
So when they were designing Sly, the designer, Scott Steinberg, made just tons and tons and tons of designs, because here's the feedback he got from the three Sonys about what Sly should look like. Sony of America wanted him to be, quote, cool. Sony of Japan wanted him to be, quote, cute. Sony of Europe wanted him to be, quote, dark and edgy. And you know what? I think that Sly Cooper maybe checks all of those boxes.
Yeah.
In his design.
He does.
So I agree. A miracle.
He's a very good design.
Can you just imagine, I realize that's not how this feedback would have been given, but I can just imagine this little art man in a room, a board table, and there's a cowboy and a Japanese businessman and a European king who are there. And they give him the three pieces of feedback.
Like the three fairies in Sleeping Beauty.
Exactly like the three fairies in Sleeping Beauty. Make it pink, make it cute, make it cool, make it edgy. So that was a fun tidbit. I also not enough games make use of amnesia as a plot element. Sly 3 ends with Sly faking amnesia and getting together with his hot cat pursuant.
Mm-hmm.
His hot cat cop girl. And then winking at the camera that doesn't really have amnesia. It's more of that. More amnesia. That seems good.
He's a very Lupin-esque figure, I feel like.
Sure.
Sly.
And also for this is more was part of, and you as a handheld aficionado will like this. 4, first of all, has some time machine shenanigans, so I could not play it. But it was part of Sony's cross-buy program, cross-buy initiative. So if you bought it on the PlayStation 3, you could also play it on the Vita, and vice versa.
Good times. I didn't have a Vita, but good times still.
That's another thing where it's like, wow, like imagine if you had to do that now. Not that there is like a handheld. Maybe that is what it's like.
What do you mean you have to do that? That's like a bonus. You get 2 copies of the game.
No. I don't mean you, the consumer. I mean you, the developer.
Oh.
And you know what? I guess having said that like maybe that's what it's like to have to develop for like the PlayStation 5 and also the Nintendo Switch.
Yes, I assume so.
But like not in quite the same way.
Probably worse. Because I think probably the architecture inside is different. More different than it would be.
That's fair. That is true. Anyway, R.I.P. the Vita.
No one ever loved you, the Vita. You died before your time.
And like somehow both before and after your time.
Yeah.
Like just the wrong time.
Very much the wrong time.
You could have been a smartphone. You
also speaking of smartphones.
Yeah, speaking of smartphones.
not that this is on a smartphone, but Granblue Fantasy ReLink does not have a smartphone version.
No smartphones. No smartphones allowed. It's a February 2024 action RPG from Cygames, which is for the PlayStations 4 and 5 and Windows. It is not on mobile, despite being a part of the Granblue Fantasy series, which is most notable for its long-running mobile gacha free-to-play game.
Which is not available over here, actually.
I was reading, though, that what Wikipedia told me is that, yeah, it's not available over here, but if you can manage to make yourself an account, like, if you can manage the Japanese page with making yourself an account,
yeah,
it has a full English translation. You can buy things with English currency. So it's like weird. It's like all set up for people to like backdoor their way into.
I mean, I think that that's true about a surprising number of things, right? You know, you see people like buying things on the Japanese eShop to get things earlier, right? Because the English is in there as well.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like that, I guess, of having translations despite only being available in certain regions.
It's just interesting though, right? Like at that point, why don't you release it here?
I don't know. Cygames mystery to me. Like most gacha type game companies that also do other stuff.
Supposedly it's more, Granblue Fantasy is more free-to-play friendly than a lot of them, but like the bar is in hell.
Anyway, before ReLink, the main normal Western release exposure was versus Rising. Am I just adding Rising for no reason? It's just Versus.
I think there's multiple ones, so
but the fighting games, essentially.
Yeah.
Which are, I believe, pretty impressive looking in terms of their 2D, 3D blend. But ReLink is an action RPG, sort of. It's sort of like weirdly paced, I feel like is the best way to put it.
Weirdly many things.
Yeah. So it was originally supposed to come out in like 2018. Very much
that's
did not
so
make
dark
that date.
To say out loud, by the way, right? To be like it's 6 years later.
Yeah. Very much did not make that date. They were working with Platinum for a while on this. And sometime in 2019, parted ways with Platinum. It seemed mostly amicable. Like,
yeah, they at least message it at Platinum as like, we just are too busy.
Yeah. They ended their contract, but it was definitely supposed to be like, they were supposed to be like a bigger partner and their role diminished over time. So after the initial, like, definitely not coming out in 2018, it was supposed to come out in 2022, got pushed to 2023, and then finally was delayed to, as you said, February 1st, 2024. So troubled development. Did not go smoothly.
They just released like a big update like a couple days ago.
Yes. Because what's interesting about it is, despite being like a full price game, it feels like it functions the way they've like released it and support it. It feels like it functions like a live service game.
Yeah.
There is microtransactions. They added microtransactions after it released, but like, it's not like they're like the silly microtransactions you can buy if you're lazy or whatever.
Yeah.
Or easily tempted, I guess. But yeah, so the way it's structured is like there's a whole bunch of characters, and part of the new update you said was like adding even more characters. And the story, the main campaign, is like 6 to 10 hours, I guess, depending on how slow or how fast you take it. And then there's just like a really big end game of like fights and battle challenges and like grinding up your characters and these things called fate episodes you can do where you can learn a little more about each character. Very gacha game.
Just with no gacha.
Just with no gacha.
Which people freaking loved.
Yeah.
People were like, oh my god, like, this is, like, I wish I had written down which review this was. I apologize, this reviewer. I didn't write down who kind of made this point. But someone was making the point of, like, you know, I could imagine exactly what this would look like as a gacha game.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you'd have to, you know, some of these characters would be way better than other ones, and you'd have to spend a bunch of money or grind super crazy hard to get the characters you want. And like it would all just be super frustrating and annoying. And instead, it's like it's like playing a gacha game with unlimited money.
Yeah.
Like you have all the characters, they're all great, or they're all equally usable, perhaps, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is it's sort of crazy it took someone so long to really like this successfully tap into that vibe.
Yeah. I mean, it feels weird, right? But also, I guess it doesn't, because so many games now have post-launch support in some manner or another, whether that's just like bug fixes or adding free content or anything like that, or, you know, paid DLCs too. So like, it feels weird because it feels like a live service game should require you to continue paying in some way.
Yeah.
But that's not actually true for all of them. You know, Helldivers 2 just came out. That's a live service game. You just pay once, right?
Yep.
To buy the game. And that's what this is too. So it just like, I'm just like, I don't know. I guess it doesn't have to make money for something like Cygames, right? It just has to bring in fans.
Yeah, it's more of a loss leader.
Yeah. Because I look at these and I'm like, I don't understand how they're, like, making money, I guess.
I mean, it's really popular for what it's worth. You know, this game seems to have been sort of an unexpectedly big hit. Certainly in a kind of a crowded RPG market.
Yes. Came out at a very awkward time.
But, you know, based on, you know, people who are tracking Steam and that sort of thing, seems to have been sort of something that got a lot more traction than might have been expected. So in that sense, you know, they probably made more money on it than they expected to, and also made more fans than they expected to. So it's interesting. Like an interesting, weird little success.
Yeah.
I also have to say that, wow, do these characters have just, like, the fantasy RPG-est of names.
Yeah.
Just reading the beginning of the plot summary of, like, the astral realm of Estalucia, Lyria, Vyrn, spelled Vyrn,
Yeah.
Catalina, Io, Rackham, Eugen, Rosetta, and then the Zega Grande Sky. Like, it's just like so much. I prefer my games to strike a balance between them being named like Joe and them being named like Vern.
Yeah.
I want like something in the. I think Cloud is a really good. Like that's a good RPG name, right?
Yeah.
And not just because we've all been socialized that. I think it's like that's a weird name that also is just a name. Like you can convince yourself that it's a name eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story of this is like, I think technically like a sequel or like a mid-quel or something to the Granblue fantasy gacha game. You play as, they call them the captain, because you can pick between playing as Jita, who's the female character, or Gran, who's the male character. This doesn't make any impact on the plot whatsoever, whoever you choose. It's just whether you want to play as a girl or a boy, essentially.
The girl's name couldn't have been Blue.
Why Blue?
Wasn't his name Gran?
Yes. Not Green.
No, like the title of the game, Emma.
Oh! You're right. Should have been Blue.
Nintendo would probably send a cease and desist.
It's Jita, Djeeta.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of like RPG stuff happens in the game. You got an airship.
Yeah.
You go around fighting stuff.
You're trying to rescue sort of your... It's Lyria, I think, is like someone you're like soul bonded to, essentially. Yeah. And so like you go and save her from Lilith and her bodyguard Id, which great. Good name.
Yeah, Id is
Love
a good one.
Id.
That's good. That's much better than Rackham. Id, that's a good villain name.
Yeah, a lot of the reviews I read were just like, it's like, what's cool? And then just sort of like follows that thread, right? Like, what's the biggest spectacle we could put here? And then they put it there. It definitely has the kind of combat system. So you can play this by yourself, or you can play it online with other people, I believe.
You can,
I don't
yes.
think it has local. I think it's just online play.
Seemed like just online to me, which bummer, but whatever.
And it's like, I watched some of just like watching like a battle in a few like video reviews, and it feels a lot. Feels like a lot. There's a lot happening on screen.
To be what everyone likes about it, though.
I know.
It's like they're not afraid to make a boss battle.
Yeah. But you've got like a lot of abilities going on, like sync skills, just like a lot of things to balance on top of like their like 20 plus playable characters that you can learn, which is a lot. So,
but overall, I mean, this was not a game. I'm gonna be really honest. I did not go into the reviews for this game like expecting reviewers to have positive feelings about it.
Yeah.
But it got the really pretty universally pretty glowing reviews.
Yeah.
That sort of like, it's a lot really seemed to work for people, and that idea of like, well, it's a little rough around the edges, but like, it's fun.
Yeah. I don't remember which interview with the developers they were talking about this. But they like talked about, but they were really trying to pick characters to put in from their big stable of characters that would play in like unique, different ways, right? And thinking about how they would play and how they would feel different from each other to make each sort of playable character stand out. So they definitely put a lot of thought into the like action element of this. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think it's developed by Arc System Works or something, the fighting games. But like people really like those, I believe. I think those are pretty well made mechanically as well. Yeah, it's on a PlayStation blog one. I love reading the PlayStation blog ones because there's always like a question that's like, how did you use the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback of the PlayStation controller?
Journalism at its finest.
But they're talking about just like picking the characters that would have unique play feel. And to be creative in the way that they express their abilities in like a new 3D space. So that seems to be the focus beyond like the campaign feels more like it's like a event story in the gacha game, sort of, in terms of its length and like the focus, I guess.
Yeah, I have to admit, I mean, I didn't play either game this week, folks. I'm sorry. Sly Cooper is not playable unless you are premium. I mean, I have a PlayStation 3, but like,
Yeah.
is it even possible to purchase from the store on PlayStation 3 anymore?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you have to do it on the PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
And like the slowness with which that runs, I would have had
Did
to have
ReLink
started
not have
purchasing.
a demo anymore?
What?
Did ReLink not have a demo anymore?
No, it had a demo, but I learned about it too late.
You didn't watch the anime with the bump of chicken opening?
Love Bump of Chicken. Did not watch that, nor did I have that tip me off to there being a demo.
I know that wouldn't have tipped you off to being a demo.
Bump of Chicken sings like, there's a demo to the game.
No, I think the anime is quite old.
No, there is a demo, which, like, people say it was supposedly a really good demo. I felt bad afterwards. I was like, shoot, I should have done that instead of bumming around with Claude Fire Emblem yesterday. But oh well. But I admit that I was intimidated and confused by the how long to beat page for Granblue Fantasy ReLink. It was like, main story, like 12 hours. Completionist, 150 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that mean? And now I understand.
Apparently,
now I understand that what it means is that they have this like post game.
Yeah. Apparently it does get a bit grindy as you are if you're trying to like level up the characters.
Sure.
The reviews I read was like very much like focus on your favorites because you're probably not going to get enough materials to level up every character. So make sure you're spending them wisely.
I'm a little tempted to play it, but I have to finish Fire Emblem first at the very least.
And like I said, each character also has these like side like fate episodes, which are also very gacha gamey in that like most of them are like little audio scenes, essentially, where you learn a little bit more about the character. And each one has 10 of these. So there's a lot of those. And they're very, like I say, they're gacha gamey because they're like little snippets of story, right, that you unlock by doing more things. So again, probably best to focus on your favorites.
I'll keep that in mind if I play it. I'm worried, though, that this will be a gateway drug to, like, Monster Hunter, which is just not something that I can sustain.
I think this plays a lot faster than a Monster Hunter, is my impression. Monster Hunter is a little bit more, like, deliberate. Not that this is not deliberate, but, like, you're doing a lot of stuff at once.
Right, but that's why I'm worried it'll be, like, a gateway drug.
I see.
I'll like this, and I'll be like, oh, I could try Monster Hunter. And then...
Clickbait Boyfriend didn't like Monster Hunter, right?
No, he did not. I thought for sure that was going to be a home run with him, and he just, like, did not like it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Clickbait Boyfriend did report that he played some Sly Cooper at, like, a friend's house as a kid. He did not have a PlayStation.
Right,
so
I was going to say.
He was like, I don't really remember anything about it, but I guess it made enough of an impression that he remembered doing it. So, there you go.
Well, anything else for Granblue Fantasy ReLink? I can't say it's a game that I'm terribly interested in, just because I have a terrible disease where the credits roll, that's it.
No, me too, but like in some ways I'm like, that's okay. Like, look, I'm on the record. I love a boss fight.
True.
And so that was really what I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Like big old boss fights? Multi-stage boss fights?
Does anyone turn into a boat? Maybe.
Does anyone turn into a boat? Do you destroy its sort of like vaguely rendered internal organs?
There are skyboats, so idea for
possible.
post-game content if they're adding anything else.
Yeah.
Someone fuses with the skyboat.
Oh my gosh. See, when this comes out in a couple months, you should sue.
I think if it comes out in a couple months, they've already been working on it.
Doesn't matter. Okay, time to mash.
Okay.
So I think both of these games have a... Like, some of what people seemed to like about Granblue Fantasy was a, like, they don't make them like this anymore kind of energy, right? That, like, it's real maximalist. It's gacha, but without the gacha. It's a little rough around the edges.
Sure.
So there's some of that sort of, like, it's got to feel a little, you know, not cutting edge, what we're doing here. And I think both of them have that, you know, it's a little light. It's a little silly, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
I'm worried that if I put Sly Cooper on an airship, that he becomes Star Fox.
That's a spaceship, though.
Still feels
There's a very fundamental difference in aesthetic between like a airship and a spaceship.
You're right. I just want to be careful.
Sure.
The moment we have, like, you know, I feel like Sly Cooper and... What is the fox's name in Star Fox? I should know this.
I think it's just Star Fox.
Then, yeah, like, I already feel like there's, like, oh, they're a little... Even though they're not anything alike, there's, like, a little bit of a large rodent, small mammal type thing going on there that I want to be careful of.
Fox McCloud. Sorry.
I knew his name could not be Star Fox.
It's basically Star Fox.
It more or less is, but I knew it wasn't. Okay, let's see. Well, you know, I feel like there could here's something. I feel like there could be something too. You know, we were talking about like, okay, like a heist has got to feel like perfectly plotted.
Yeah.
Right? And you probably can't sustain that over like a very long playthrough. But what could be interesting, right? So like the whole like thing about Granblue ReLink here is it's got a pretty tight might be the wrong word for it, but short story.
Right.
With some big set pieces. And then you get kind of like loosed on the world. And I feel like there's some overlap there between like what a good heist story could be.
Sure. I can see that. I think it would be difficult to... Like, I don't know how you would go from, like, a tight heist to, like, now here's the super boss heist that you can fight in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that would work, really.
I think it would have to be supernatural in some way.
The heist?
Yeah. Like, you would have to, like, break into the safe by, like, fighting a big old dude.
Okay.
Maybe. Look, I'm
Persona
not
5.
convinced this would work. You're right. That the big challenge is how do you then break out into a robust post-game? So you'd have to, like, plant some seeds.
You're making Persona 5. I feel like I should.
I am. You know what? You're right that what I've invented is a much shorter, more gacha-themed Persona 5.
The Phantom X, you might say.
Great. I tried.
Sorry, I don't mean to compare everything to Persona 5, but you're just saying, like, you have to fight a guy to, like...
The exact game that I just created was, like, a sort of, like, slightly restructured version of Persona 5. Which is, you know, like, give the people what they want, right?
Yeah. I like Phantom Thieves, you know? I mean, maybe it's just, like, some sort of thievery game, stealth game thing. Where you have like a a tight, like, not really like a heist, but like an infiltration mission, and then I don't know, more infiltration missions around the world.
I
You can take on as you want.
I don't think you could do that because I think that the heist thing would have to be like so tight, and then like what would the gameplay be?
Well, there's something to like the idea of like a thieves guild, I feel like, right? That sort of crosses over with like your gacha stable.
Sure.
So there's something there.
Sly 4 does sort of do that a little bit.
Okay, good.
But what I'm saying is I'm worried that the game we are talking about has in some ways already partially been made.
I'm not suggesting time travel.
No. But like in that one, it's like, oh, like you play as a bunch of different characters.
Okay, but that has to be part of the crossover. You have to be able to play as a bunch of different
I know. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm not sure if my heist idea has legs.
Okay. I mean, it has to be something with thievery and with having a bunch of characters. That's like the two fundamental aspects of
They can
these
be
games.
thievery. I mean, I think probably you could just print money with like a, gacha inspired, but they're animals. Right? Gacha inspired.
I do feel like there's a gap in the market for the furries out there.
I know. Right? It just feels like an obvious market.
Yeah.
And nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
Like, you could be thieves like Nathan Drake is thieves.
Yeah.
Where you say you're thieves in the story, but mostly you just punch a bunch of people.
Punch? It's giving Nathan Drake a lot
I know
of
Nathan Drake
credit.
shoots them, but I'm not letting my, like, anthropomorphic pig have a gun.
But that's the perfect character to give the gun.
Okay, they can't all have guns. How about
Yes, I'm just saying someone probably has a gun in the scope
I'll
of
allow it.
gacha characters.
You're right.
Or a gun-like thing.
Projectile weapon.
Yeah. So you're more like treasure hunters? Treasure hunters? Pirates?
Sure, pirates, treasure hunter, yeah, and it's like to get the treasure, you fight a big boss.
Yeah. Essentially, that's what Sly does, too, right?
Yeah.
He does fight a boss at the end of each level in the first Sly.
And, it's nice because it's, the animals mean that no one would ever make this. We just can't have anthropomorphic characters anymore. It's not allowed.
No.
It's been banned.
They don't want to know. You know what? Maybe it's because of the rise of social media. They're like, we don't actually want to know how many of our audience are furries.
Yeah, we don't want to know what people think of these characters.
So we should make normal men so that we can only be exposed to non-furry sexiness in games. Listen to last week's episode.
Yeah, seriously, that's a good plug for last week's episode. Yeah, they're like the community managers were like, we can't do this.
We don't wanna.
Like, we can't.
We hate our furry audience.
Well, I think that's a decent idea. I'm gonna continue. I'm like, how would I make my like heist into giant post-game game work?
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could.
Some things just throw it in the pile, Madelyn. Things that should work.
Somebody will make it. I'll be like, that was my idea. Anyway, listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, if you have thoughts on anything that we talked about this week, did you play Sly Cooper? Have you played Granblue Fantasy? Have you found a way to play Granblue Fantasy over here in the West? Have you played ReLink? Do you love a big old boss guy? Do you want more thieves in your games? Are you Sly Cooper, the turtle, or the hippo in your life? Which do you identify with the most closely? If you have thoughts about this or anything else that we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, Check out the Games in the Hat that Emma's firing up right now, and read our blog featuring long-running series Click Quick Boyfriend and Split Screen. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, anywhere that you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This, so you can continue to hear me cut down the little gap between where Google Podcasts and Stitcher used to be. And more importantly, so that you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon. Next week, it is 6 weeks in gaming. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I need to play some games.
Don't worry, I've got us covered.
I'm hoping to start a few things this week.
Okay.
I've been playing. It's just like it can't just be Fire Emblem. I don't even have that much to say about Fire Emblem.
I want the listeners should know all of the Julius Caesar comparisons.
That's what's happening. Democracy, not that it was democracy, but the tiny proto-democracy has been abolished.
Good.
And everyone's like, this seems fine. Anyway, stay tuned for more thoughts like that next week. But in 2 weeks, what are we talking about?
In 2 weeks, you really need to remind me to replace the Games in the Hat, by the way. We are running low. But for 2 weeks, in our old game is going to be Shinobi.
Okay.
And our new game is going to be Helldivers 2.
Oh, boy.
That'll be a fun one.
Can I play Helldivers 2?
I mean, you have to buy it.
Is it on a It's not just PC? That feels like a game that would just
No,
be
it's
PC.
PlayStation.
Oh. Man.
So you could.
I can get into the fascist metagame here.
Oh no.
Right?
Oh, sort of. I mean, it's not fascist to play Helldivers 2.
I'm not saying it's fascist to play, but isn't the whole thing that it's kind of whatever. More on this.
Yes.
More on this in 2 weeks.
Sorry, fascist metagame makes it sound like you're talking about the metagame is that you're playing fascist. I don't know.
No. I just meant them making ominous social media announcements.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So look forward to that.
Yeah.
That's it for this week's show. Thanks for listening. Emma, sign us off.
This week, I hope that your family book stays safe and sound where it belongs.